And so, Dad, why is it not worth dismissing some of these ideas? Because there are going to be people out there who do have a more rational viewpoint who probably will dismiss some of these ideas. But I wonder, particularly for our purposes, what are some of the reasons that you think that it's worth looking into?
Okay, well, one of the main things I think is that these ideas can work. And we start off with the notion of placebo effects that we talked about last time. The notion of our belief can change the outcome of a circumstance. For example, if we believe that we're likely to recover from depression or an addiction or something like that, it's actually going to help us recover in certain ways. Whereas if we are focused on the feeling of being helpless or doomed, then that's going to interfere with our recovery. So that's one level at which it influences things. But there have been people who took it a bit further, these ideas, like Carl Jung, when he looked at the collective unconscious. And so Carl Jung would not just help people draw on dream experiences and images in people's minds, but also synchronicity, which is something of a mystical phenomenon, if you like, the notion that some coincidences that happen are so meaningful, it seems to go beyond chance. Well, certainly it's meaningful, and we can draw on those experiences to help, even in healing. And Jung would have had a number of examples of that. But then there was William James, who was a very scientifically minded psychologist. He was actually the first psychologist to develop a laboratory, I believe in 1879. So this is very early on, his scientific approach. But William James also believed in mystical experience. He actually used to experiment with nitrous oxide, a psychedelic. Interestingly, psychedelics are starting to become a little bit more popular in the idea of research in the last year or two. But he was exploring different ways of, I suppose, appreciating an aspect of reality or life through exploring psychedelics. And he believed that there was a mystical dimension that he defined with 4 characteristics. It's ineffable. So it's hard to describe what we mean by mysticism or even paranormal experience in words. It's hard to explain this. It's noetic. So there's this sense of gaining knowledge in some ways that you can't just gain from the intellect. There's something more deeply intuitive going on. It's also transient, so mystical phenomena just don't last indefinitely, and it's passive, meaning there's a feeling of something coming from the outside. So in terms of healing, and this kind of holistic healing open to a soul dimension or a mystical dimension, it's as though people are opening themselves up to some kind of force or consciousness beyond oneself, which also, as we'll talk about later, can include other people's thoughts encouraging healing.